Do you believe that a short message of just 9 words could open the door to another dimension? Mommy, I'm hiding in the closet. He didn't knock. A 7-year-old girl vanished on a rainy night, without a trace, without a sound, and the room remained intact, as if nothing had ever happened. 15 years passed, and the mother kept the room exactly as it was, until one day, an old photo unexpectedly fell out of a box labeled Birthday 2009. In the mirror, behind the child, was a shadow, one that didn't belong to anyone in the family. And then, the secrets began to unravel. A series of similar disappearances across the United States, cryptic messages left beside mirrors, voices no one could explain, and a chilling truth about the place known as the second floor, behind the mirror. This is not just a story of a disappearance. This is an exchange. And do you dare look into the mirror after 2:04 a.m., Bend, Oregon, a night in November 2009. A light drizzle fell from the sky, and the wind whispered softly through the dark pine trees lining the edge of the Deschutes forest. In a 2-story farmhouse-style wooden home, the soft orange glow of a nightlight spilled from a small second-floor window like a fragile breath within the thick mist. That room belonged to Elena Morgan, a 7-year-old girl with gently curled brown hair, clear eyes, and a laugh like a tiny bell. It was also the last place she was ever seen. That night, Rebecca Morgan was working a night shift at the local hospital. Her phone vibrated gently in the pocket of her white lab coat. A message from Elena. The child's phone was a basic one, capable of calling and texting only 3 numbers: Mom, Grandma, and Dad. Rebecca discreetly checked the message in the break room, and her heart clenched. Mommy, I'm hiding in the closet. Someone's outside. He didn't knock. For a moment, Rebecca's world froze. She rushed out of the hospital, heart pounding wildly. The drizzle grew heavier, the roads slick and engulfed in darkness, but she didn't stop. In the headlights, the trees along the road seemed to bow, silent and cold. Rebecca braked hard in front of the house. The front door was still locked. Elena's grandmother, who lived with them, was dozing on the sofa with the TV playing quietly in the background. "Where's Elena?" Rebecca whispered, her voice cracking. The old woman startled awake, stammering. She said she was going to play with her dolls in her room. Elena's door was ajar. Rebecca switched on the light. Everything looked normal. Teddy bears on the bed, the nightlight casting a dim glow, a fairy tale book still lying open on the desk. But the closet door was open. The window beside it was wide open too, the curtains fluttering gently in the wind. There was no Elena, no crying, no trace. Rebecca ran to the backyard. The garden gate was still locked. She screamed Elena's name into the night, but no one answered. When the police arrived, every path was searched, from the attic to the basement, from the nearby stream to the forest's edge. No muddy footprints, no barking dogs, no unfamiliar tracks. One of the investigators tilted his head and asked Rebecca, "Are you sure the message was real?" Rebecca held out her phone. "Here." But the strange part was, just 72 hours later, the message disappeared. No backup, no trace on the server. Only a hastily taken screenshot that Rebecca had saved before leaving the hospital. Rebecca's ex-husband, Gavin Morgan, became a person of interest due to previous custody disputes, but he was confirmed to be in Eugene at a meeting, with clear evidence to support it. Still, the entire town began looking at him differently. The public pressure was heavy. Rebecca shut out the media. Every morning, she cleaned her daughter's window, as if waiting for some fragile sign to appear. The case was officially labeled missing without a trace. 1 year passed, then 2, then 5, eventually 15. But in Rebecca Morgan's heart, nothing had ever truly ended. Since the day Elena vanished, no one was allowed to enter that room. The purple princess blanket remained untouched. Every year, on November 11th, Rebecca placed a new teddy bear inside the closet. Some years it was blue, some years pink. No one understood why, only that each time she did it, her tears fell silently. Many said she was haunted, some said she was stubborn, but none of them were a mother who had read her child's final message, and then never heard her voice again. The story of Elena slowly faded into the past, like a sorrowful dream. New children were born, new families moved in, but one person quietly remained in that old house, and one question was never dared spoken aloud. Who was standing outside the closet that night? In the days following Elena's disappearance, the town of Bend felt like it was trapped in a winter haze. Along the snow-covered streets, flyers with the photo of the 7-year-old girl, with her brown hair and purple headband, were plastered everywhere, on bookstore windows, library bulletin boards, lampposts near the church. The child's eyes in the photo stared straight into the lens, as if she knew something no one else dared to face. But week after week, month after month, the wind carried those papers away. The photos faded, torn at the edges, and people began to forget. The FBI got involved 3 days after no trace was found. They brought in specialized equipment, K9 units, thermal scanners, and the confidence that this was a textbook kidnapping case. But the house showed no signs of forced entry. No blood. No torn fabric. Elena's window was open, but there were no muddy footprints beneath the sill. Despite the rainy weather that night, all exit points were unusually clean. Police referred to it as an anomalous scene, an illogical crime scene. But with no evidence, every theory remained speculation. Rebecca described the final message. They asked to see the phone. The message was gone. The child messaging app had an auto-delete setting. All messages disappeared after 72 hours, if not saved. The only remnant was a screenshot Rebecca had frantically captured before leaving the hospital. A single chilling line. "Mommy, I'm hiding in the closet. Someone's outside. He didn't knock." Technical experts examined the image and confirmed it hadn't been tampered with. But without the original file, they couldn't retrieve an IP address or GPS data. Rebecca kept repeating that she felt a chill the moment she read that text, as if some part of her already knew that night wasn't just a case of a child getting lost. Gavin Morgan, Elena's father, was summoned for questioning. He lived 180 kilometers away, in Eugene, and had been in a company meeting at the time of the disappearance. Building security footage confirmed his alibi. Though there was no evidence against him, Gavin was cast as the failed father. The media pursued him relentlessly. Rumors spread that the couple had custody disputes, that Gavin had once scolded Elena for spilling water on his laptop. But all of it was hearsay. Rebecca cut off all contact. She lived in silence, as if only two things remained: her hospital work and Elena's room, kept exactly as it was, unchanged, as though time had frozen there. 6 months later, the FBI announced that there was insufficient cause to continue the investigation. Elena's case was classified as missing, presumed lost, but no one dared say that phrase aloud in front of Rebecca. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she simply said, "She's still out there, I know it." Time passed, old neighbors moved away, new residents arrived, unaware of the story from years past. The local children no longer heard their parents warn, "Don't play near the woods, that's where Elena went missing." Those who once printed flyers, once lit candles at the vigil behind the church, gradually fell silent. Only the second-floor room remained untouched. Rebecca allowed no one inside. She cleaned it weekly: the toys, the pillows, the wall stickers, the soft yellow glow from the star-shaped nightlight. Everything was preserved, as if under a glass dome. She told herself each day, she'll come back, and she'll see her room just as she left it. On some nights, people spotted Rebecca standing at the second-floor window, gazing out toward the Deschutes forest. She wouldn't blink, wouldn't speak. When asked, she only said, "The closet door? It never opened by itself before that night. But in recent weeks, I always find it slightly ajar, even though I shut it tight." The small town no longer wanted to mention Elena Morgan, as if the less people remembered, the sooner the pain would fade. But to Rebecca, everything was only just beginning. In her heart, it wasn't just a missing child, but an unanswered, haunting question. If no one broke in and no one was seen, then who was standing outside that closet door? For 15 years, the second floor of the old wooden house on Edgewater Drive had always remained lit through the night. Not because anyone lived there, but because a mother refused to let darkness take over the room where her daughter once slept. To Rebecca Morgan, that room was not just a place to stay. It was the last living piece of Elena's memory. A memory box she refused to let time or forgetfulness cover in dust. Every detail, from the pale lavender-painted walls to the star-shaped decals on the ceiling, remained just as it had been the morning Elena last left for school. In the left corner of the room stood a wooden oak wardrobe with a slightly crooked door and squeaky hinges. Inside hung a few tiny dresses, a plastic shelf of doll accessories, and a blue paper box, where Elena used to hide her secrets: drawings, stashed candy, or a stuffed mouse with a torn ear. But What made the wardrobe special, or rather haunting, was Elena's final message. "I'm hiding in the closet. He didn't knock." Rebecca had not let anyone touch that closet since the night her daughter disappeared. She wiped it with a soft cloth every week, checked for signs of disturbance, and gently closed it, like there was still a child sleeping inside. She was not superstitious, but deep within her, there was a very small, fragile belief that perhaps Elena had returned at some point, or was still somehow present in ways unseen. Once, a neighbor, Mrs. Ann, who lived one house over, came by to visit and accidentally opened the closet door while dusting. Rebecca slammed it shut immediately, her face pale, and whispered, "Don't open it unless you hear a voice from inside." Mrs. Ann later told her son that Rebecca seemed more and more lost in her own world, but she didn't judge her. How could a mother ever move on when the very room, the very closet, was the place her child vanished? Every year, on November 11th, the exact date Elena went missing, Rebecca quietly stepped into the room carrying a new teddy bear. She placed it inside the closet, gently stroked its head, and said, "This is your new friend. This year it's yellow. I'll set it beside the shelf, just like you used to do." Each time she stood there for a long while, sometimes trembling with a faint smile, sometimes sobbing aloud, but never once did Rebecca let anyone witness that moment. It was a private ritual between a mother and a child the world believed no longer existed. Time passed. Rebecca didn't leave town, didn't sell the house, didn't move. Though her hospital job became more demanding, she clung to a strict routine: early mornings at work, afternoons stopping by the market, evenings returning home to check Elena's room on the second floor. At first, it was for cleaning. Later, it became habit, and then an unbreakable ritual. On stormy nights, she would stand by the window looking out into the forest behind the house. The same forest police had searched for 4 straight days, but found nothing. The woods lay still, dark as bottomless velvet. Rebecca once dreamed of Elena wandering there, wearing her blue pajamas, clutching her teddy bear, calling out to her mother in vain. In the 12th year after the incident, while cleaning the drawer at the foot of the bed, Rebecca found an old drawing by Elena. On a crumpled A4 sheet was a sketch of a little girl standing beside a large closet, and inside was a strange figure, humanoid, but eyeless, with a round mask-like face. Below the image, scrawled in childish handwriting, were the words, "Don't let him see. I closed the door, but he still smiled." Rebecca kept the paper in her wallet for a week, telling no one. She wasn't sure if it was just a child's imagination or a truth long forgotten, but the drawing sent chills down her spine. In the 15th year, for the first time in over a decade, Rebecca decided to open the closet for longer than just a few seconds. She wanted to inspect it thoroughly, compelled by a vague sense that she had missed something. When the door swung fully open, she felt a faint cold breeze, unlike air conditioning, and not from outside either. She reached out and ran her fingers along the wooden interior. That was when her fingertip touched something she had never noticed before. There were small scratches on the wood, each a few centimeters long, deep, rough, and uneven. Rebecca turned on her phone's flashlight and looked closer, and she froze. Under the stark white light, a message appeared, scraped in either fingernail or some sharp object. He whispered my name. The letters were small, uneven, but unmistakably familiar. Rebecca instantly recognized the handwriting. It was Elena's, identical to the lettering in the homework book she had stored in the drawer. Impossible to mistake. The entire room seemed to fall into an eerie silence. No ticking clock, no breeze rustling. Just a mother standing motionless before the first tangible trace of her daughter in 15 years. A trace left inside the very closet the girl had once hidden in. And for the first time in years, Rebecca did not close the closet door. In the summer of 2024, the town of Bend remained as peaceful as ever. So peaceful that people easily forgot this was the place where a child had once vanished from inside her very own home. Rebecca was now in her early 50s, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes remained unchanged, deep, distant, and always as if listening to something no one else could hear. She no longer worked as a nurse, having retired early to tend to her small garden and occasionally sell old belongings in the yard, partly to clear out old memories, partly to stay occupied, to keep her mind from drifting back to that rainy night. That afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the pine trees behind the house, Rebecca struggled to open an old cardboard box kept in the attic, one labeled Birthday Elena 2009. She intended to pick out a few toys, unused balloons, and old greeting cards to put out for sale. Each item she touched carried a memory. Images of Elena grinning beside a birthday cake, frosting on her fingers, friends singing "Happy Birthday" in the backyard. At the bottom of the box, a small Polaroid photo slipped out from between a paper folder and an old card, face down. Rebecca picked it up and gently brushed off the dust that clung to the edge. The photo had yellowed with age, the edges worn. When she turned it over, her heart seemed to stop for a beat. It was a photo of Elena standing in front of her birthday cake, wearing a purple floral dress and a paper crown, beaming with joy. Everything looked perfectly normal, except for the figure in the wardrobe mirror behind her. A dark, blurry silhouette, unmoving within that narrow mirrored space. A human shape. Rebecca sank to the floor, eyes fixed on the photo. She checked again. The mirror in the picture was clearly the same as the one on Elena's wardrobe door. But that figure? No one remembered anyone standing there during the party. It was blurry, slightly off-angle, the face indistinct. But the figure was tall, head slightly bowed, arms hanging straight down. Stranger still, the entire room in the photo was lit by daylight, yet the reflection in the mirror looked dim, as if it belonged to another place entirely, a separate space. She sat there in stunned silence for a long time before shakily rising to her feet, taking her phone to photograph the image and zoom in detail by detail. With each level of zoom, her heart pounded harder. The shadowy figure wasn't just standing behind Elena. Its face seemed to be turned toward the camera, and where the eyes should have been, there were only deep black hollows, like two endless voids. Unable to believe her own eyes, Rebecca called her old friend Lucas, a photographer who specialized in restoring vintage photos. Lucas lived in Portland and had helped local museums restore century-old images. When he received the photo, he initially assumed it was just a lighting artifact. But after running it through a color depth analysis tool, he called back that very night. "Rebecca, the reflection in the mirror doesn't share the same light source as the rest of the image. And what's even stranger, it doesn't match any logical direction of the lighting in the photo." "What do you mean?" "I've restored hundreds of photographs. If a reflection is real, the lighting angles must align. But here, it's completely off. As if that figure doesn't belong to the room where the picture was taken. As if it's reflecting a different space altogether." Lucas paused. "Or a different moment in time." A chill ran through Rebecca's spine. Her hand clenched the old photo. Not out of fear, but because for the first time in 15 years, she had a tangible clue. Not a memory, not a gut feeling, but something real. The next morning, she entered Elena's room. For the first time in years, she placed the original photo in front of the wardrobe mirror. She aligned her position just as it had been in the image. The sunlight filtering through the curtains matched exactly. But now, the mirror only reflected herself. Silver-haired, hollow-cheeked, eyes tired yet burning with determination. No shadowy figure, no dim, alternate space. But something subtle caught her eye. When she looked closely at the mirror's edge, she noticed faint scratches, exactly where the figure had stood in the photo. Rebecca grabbed a magnifying glass to inspect them. The scratches weren't deep, but they were distinct, as if something had once pressed against the glass, with fingernails. She took a deep breath. Deep inside, a sense, an instinct began to stir. If the photo was real, if that shadow in the mirror didn't belong to this world, then Elena might still be somewhere. Not abducted, not killed, but held. Inside the mirror, or behind it. That night, she sat staring at the photo for hours. And at exactly 2:04 a.m., the same time Elena had sent her last message, the nightlight in the room flickered softly once. There was no wind. No one had touched the switch. Rebecca did not look away from the mirror, and for the first time in 15 years, she whispered into the night, "Elena, if you can hear me, Mommy's here." The next day, rain fell over Bend. A quiet, persistent summer rain, as if slowly washing away the rotting fragments of memory this town still held. But for Rebecca Morgan, that day wasn't just another meaningless passage of time. She now had something she had searched for over the past 15 years. A tangible clue. A trace. A crack in the wall between reality and whatever had always lingered behind the mirror in the second-floor room. Rebecca decided to bring a high-resolution scan of the Polaroid photo to an advanced imaging technology center in Eugene. The center belonged to a private research project called Spectra Frame, founded by former NASA engineers and specialists in vintage photo preservation. The assistant at the reception desk flinched slightly upon seeing the image, but didn't ask much. Rebecca simply said, "I want to know if the blurred face behind my daughter can be reconstructed. I need to know who it is." A technician named Alan took on the request. When he saw the shadow in the mirror, he squinted but didn't show any reaction, only nodding slowly. "We can use deep learning to analyze the blurred pixels and reconstruct a facial model based on light reflection data and body proportions, but the results will be approximate. Are you okay with that?" Rebecca nodded. "Just try." The process took 4 days. Throughout those 4 days, Rebecca didn't sleep through a single night. She paced around Elena's room, placed a bundle of dried lavender into the worn glass vase, and sat before the wardrobe mirror for hours. Sometimes she closely inspected each scratch. Sometimes she closed her eyes, as if listening for something behind the thin sheet of glass. Every night, at exactly 2:04 a.m., the nightlight still flickered once. Just once. Never twice, never 3 times. Just one flicker, steady as a heartbeat tapping from the other side. On the 4th day, Alan called. His voice carried a strange tension. "Mrs. Rebecca, I think you should come in." Rebecca drove through the rain that night. At the lab, the assistant led her into a dark room where a large screen displayed 3 images side by side: the original photo, the enhanced version, and the AI reconstructed face from the mirror. Rebecca couldn't believe her eyes. The reconstructed face, though imperfect, emerged with enough clarity to make her blood run cold. A square jaw, high cheekbones, a straight nose, deep-set eyes, but most unsettling of all was the black void where the eyes should have been. Every attempt to reconstruct the eyes had failed. The deep AI couldn't generate them. There was no light reflection data from that area. One of the experts commented, "That's not a blurry part, that's a part that doesn't exist." But what made Rebecca leap to her feet wasn't the empty eye sockets. It was the face itself, distorted slightly by the mirror's angle and lighting, yet still eerily familiar. "We ran the face through a public facial recognition database," Alan continued, "and we got an 86% match." Rebecca swallowed. "Who is it?" Alan exhaled. "Jeremiah Clay, missing since 1978, was under investigation for multiple child disappearances in Northern Oregon. No charges were ever filed, but he vanished after police interrogation." Rebecca reeled. "But that was over 40 years ago." "Exactly, but you need to see this." Alan moved to the next slide, a photograph taken in 1977. Jeremiah Clay standing in a forest, wearing a cap and thick coat. The posture, the facial structure, the straight nose, it all matched the AI reconstruction. No one has seen him since 1978. No proof he's alive or dead. No death certificate. No body. And now, his face appears in a photo of your daughter, taken in 2009. A heavy silence filled the dark room. Rebecca trembled slightly. What rose inside her wasn't fear, but confirmation. A part of her had always known that the figure standing behind the closet that night wasn't just some intruder, not a random man who wandered into their house, but something that had existed far longer, before Elena was ever born. And now, that face had returned, as if it had never left. Rebecca clenched both fists. If he's still alive, then Elena might be too. The words didn't come as a hopeful plea. They rang like a declaration, a truth she was on the verge of reaching. On the way home, the rain poured harder. She didn't turn on the radio, didn't listen to music. Her mind focused on one question. If Jeremiah Clay was real and had once been inside Elena's room, then how did he get in? How did he disappear? And most of all, where is he now? Rebecca glanced into the rearview mirror, and for a brief moment, as a streetlight flickered past the car window, she felt something shift in the darkness behind the back seat. She turned, nothing. But her heart wasn't empty. It beat against her chest as if trying to tear through it. Elena, Mommy won't stop, even if it means going to the very end of the mirror. That night, Rebecca didn't sleep. She placed the original Polaroid photo on the vanity in Elena's room, right next to the AI reconstructed face and the 1977 photo of Jeremiah Clay. 3 faces, 3 moments in time, but all sharing the same posture, and all gazing in the same direction. the wardrobe mirror that had haunted her for 15 years. The room was as silent as ever, yet Rebecca felt something in the air had changed, a heaviness, something truly present, as if even time itself had paused within these walls. Near midnight, she pulled out a UV light from the drawer, something she once used as a nurse to detect dried blood. She didn't know why, but tonight she had brought the violet beam with her, guided by instinct. Standing before the wardrobe, she aimed the light directly at the inner wall, where she had previously discovered the scratched phrase, "He whispered my name." But this time, under the dim purple glow, something else began to emerge. The wood, which once seemed smooth, now revealed faded markings beneath the dust of time, deep overlapping scratches like a map. Rebecca held her breath, slowly tracing the beam along the grooves. A string of characters appeared, so small they would have gone unnoticed without this light. She leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't trust the door. It's not a closet, it's a mouth." Right beside the phrase was a strange symbol etched with something sharp, a circle enclosing 6 intersecting lines, like a fractured star or a distorted flower. Rebecca had never seen this symbol before. It wasn't something a 7-year-old child could have made up. Too intricate, too unusual, too ancient. She snapped a photo and immediately sent it to Lucas, her friend who specialized in photo restoration. Not long after, he called back, his voice tight with unease. "That symbol. I think I've seen it before in an old FBI file on Jeremiah Clay. There was a report that mentioned a similar marking carved inside the wooden shack he once lived in, deep in the Deschutes forest. But it was never made public. The shack was torn down in the 80s, supposedly for fire prevention. Do you remember the location? Near Mirror Lake, about 3 miles from your house. But are you sure you want to go there? That place, no one likes to talk about it." Rebecca looked at the mirror, her eyes steely. "I'm not looking for a shack. I'm looking for my daughter." The next morning, before the sun could rise, Rebecca packed a paper map, flashlight, fully charged phone, and a printed copy of the photo with the strange symbol. She entered the Deschutes forest through the narrow trail behind her backyard, the path she had avoided for 15 years, as if dodging a curse. But now, every step she took felt more deliberate, almost as if every dry leaf beneath her feet was guiding her forward. The trail wound between towering Douglas firs, thick with moss. The forest seemed drained of sound. No bird song, no rustling wind. Only the crackle of dry leaves underfoot, and her own breath filled the space. After nearly an hour of walking, she stopped at a slightly sunken clearing where the trees grew sparse. Beneath withered vines, she uncovered rotting wooden beams, the remnants of a structure. She knelt down, pulling away layers of roots. The wood had softened with decay, but beneath it was a small iron hatch, rectangular and sealed with rusted bolts. Her hand trembled as she grasped the handle. Though corroded, the door gave way slightly, and from beneath came a breath of cold air, rising like an exhale from the earth. Below were crooked wooden steps leading into darkness. Rebecca shone her light downward. There was no sound, no footprints, but on the wooden wall inside, she saw the same 6-pointed star symbol again. She whispered, "Elena, if you're here, I'm coming with you." Then Rebecca stepped onto the first stair. The space underground was damp and narrow, but not haphazard. It had structure, a tight wooden corridor, the walls built from rough planks. At the end of the passage was a smaller door, latched from the outside. Rebecca unbolted it, her heartbeat pounding like a war drum. The room inside stunned her. No more than 3 square meters, its walls were covered in crayon drawings. A sun, flowers, a mother with long hair. In one corner lay a small pillow, a child's blanket, and a teddy bear, the same one Rebecca had bought in 2009. The one she thought Elena had taken with her, but had never been found. Rebecca collapsed to her knees. On the floor lay a new drawing, made with white chalk, the handwriting messy but legible. "I'm not dead, but you have to hurry." She wept, silently, tears soaking the drawing, merging with a memory torn wide open. Elena had been here, maybe still nearby, it's Uiter Brigitte. But who or what had kept her trapped for 15 years? And why had the wardrobe mirror in the second-floor room been the beginning of it all? Rebecca sat motionless in the underground room, her hands still clutching the scrap of paper with the scribbled words. "I'm not dead, but you have to hurry." Her heart pounded violently, emotions flooding in like a broken dam, after 15 years of repression. Every childish drawing on the wall, every trembling letter on the rotting wooden floor carried a breath she recognized. Elena had once lived here. The girl had left traces. She was still waiting. But where was she waiting? And who had brought her here? Who had kept Elena underground all these years without anyone knowing? On the way back, the sun had begun to dip. Light filtered through the pine branches like thin golden blades, slicing into Rebecca's racing heart. She didn't return home immediately, but stopped by the town's public library. Something stirred in her mind, a ripple of intuition, as if this story didn't belong only to Elena. She opened a computer and typed the keywords, "Missing Girl Closet Message, Washington." After a few minutes, an old news article appeared on page 3 of a little-known local news site. 8-year-old girl missing in Spokane, leaves eerie message on bedroom door. He watches from the closet. Rebecca froze. Spokane, a city in Washington state, was more than 500 kilometers north of Bend. The case had occurred just a year earlier, in 2023. The victim was Allie Reynolds, a well-behaved second grader. Her parents said Allie had shown signs of anxiety days before vanishing, often whispering to her teddy bear, "He's watching me again." From the mirror, on the day she disappeared, her parents found a message written in black marker on her bedroom door. "He watches from the closet. He doesn't blink." Police dismissed it, saying the child was likely influenced by horror movies and had possibly slipped out on her own. But security cameras showed no footage of Allie leaving the house. Every door and window had been locked from the inside. Rebecca read the article over and over, her hands trembling. That phrase, the tone, was almost identical to the last message Elena had sent 15 years ago. But Allie had never known about Elena. Elena's case had long faded from public memory, no longer in official archives, never linked to any other disappearances. She immediately emailed Lucas the article. Hours later, Lucas called back. "Rebecca, I checked. Both Allie and Elena had photos taken in their bedrooms and in both pictures. There's one detail no one ever noticed." "What detail?" "I'm top left corner, closet mirror. In Allie's photo, though blurry, there's a faint reflection that closely resembles the figure in Elena's photo." Rebecca nearly collapsed. This was no longer coincidence. This was a repeating pattern, a phenomenon, an entity, a presence hidden behind seemingly harmless closet doors in children's bedrooms. And the most haunting part, it didn't age over time, it didn't fade, it didn't change. Rebecca decided to travel to Spokane. She went to the Reynolds family's home and knocked on the door like a stranger. Yet, her heart trembled because the past was repeating itself before her eyes. Allie's mother, Sarah, a pale woman with blonde hair and exhausted eyes, looked at Rebecca warily at first. But when Rebecca showed her the photo of Elena, the drawing from the underground chamber, and the AI-rendered shadowy face, Sarah sank into her chair, tears falling uncontrollably. "We thought it was just us. Everyone said I was crazy, said I was obsessed with movies. But I knew Allie wasn't making it up. She was truly afraid," Sarah whispered, her eyes swollen. Rebecca asked, "In her last days, did Allie say anything?" Sarah nodded and pulled a worn, wrinkled piece of paper from her wallet, bearing a child's drawing, a faceless man standing in front of a mirror, and the words beneath it, "He's in the mirror, but he lives behind the closet." The two women looked at each other. Neither said a word. That evening, Rebecca returned to Bend. Only one thought rang in her mind. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't a crime committed by man. This was a cycle, a pattern, an invisible hand targeting children who saw too much or felt too deeply. And if that was true, then it wasn't over. Rebecca stepped into Elena's room and stared at the wardrobe mirror. She placed her palm on the cold glass. For a moment, the nightlight flickered, and for the first time, from the surface of the mirror, there came a knock, 3 times dot. After the 3 knocks echoed from the wardrobe mirror that night, Rebecca barely slept. She sat motionless on the wicker chair beside Elena's bed, her hand gently pressed against the glass, as if trying to hold on to a connection that had just begun to surface, only to vanish like smoke. Maybe it was an illusion. Maybe it wasn't. But her instinct had never been clearer. Elena was trying to communicate, and something, or someone, was trying to keep her from doing so. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight streamed into the room, an old thought resurfaced in Rebecca's mind, one she had buried for years, the pale yellow teddy bear, the last toy she had placed inside the wardrobe on the day Elena disappeared, and the only item later found in the underground chamber in the forest. Rebecca went downstairs and opened the old trunk in the living room, where she kept toys she hadn't dared to touch. Wrapped in old newspaper in one corner was that teddy bear, Little Muffin, the name Elena had given it because of its round, chubby body and goofy smile. As Rebecca held the bear, she noticed something. The back was stiff, like it contained a different material, unlike any other plush toy. Her instincts urged her to examine it carefully. With a small pair of scissors, she gently cut open the seam at the back of Muffin's neck. A tiny plastic chip emerged, the kind used in children's toys to play laughs or greetings. She pulled it out, blew off a thin layer of dust, and tried connecting it to an old playback device she still had at home. After a few flickers, the audio played, and the first voice made her burst into tears. "Mommy, I'm playing with Muffin. You got him for my birthday last year? He can't talk, but I taught him to sing." It was Elena's voice, pure, innocent, every word ringing like a bell in Rebecca's heart. She clutched the speaker tightly, tears pouring down. Then, the recording continued. This time, the voice dropped, trembling. Mommy, he's here again. He's watching me from the mirror. But today he talked. He said he knows my name. He said you can't hear him." Rebecca froze. Elena's whisper through the toy sounded like she was about to cry. Her breath sharp and frightened, like knives carving into a mother's silent heart. And then, at the end of the tape, only breathing remained, and a deep, gravelly male voice, murmuring close to the mic. "No, stop talking. I told you. Your mother won't make it in time." Click. The audio cut abruptly. Rebecca sat in stunned silence. Her hands trembled so violently, she dropped the device to the floor. The room was deathly still. Only the ticking of the wall clock remained. Steady. Cold. 1 minute, then 2. She took a deep breath and stood up. There was no more doubt. Something had approached Elena. It knew her name. It knew her mother existed. And it had been close enough to whisper into the very toy Elena held. That afternoon, Rebecca brought the recorder to Lucas and asked him to extract the audio and analyze the male voice's frequency. After several hours of work in the studio, Lucas returned with a pale expression. "Rebecca, the voice at the end, it's strangely familiar." "Familiar to whom?" Lucas looked at her for a moment, then turned the monitor toward her. He played a forgotten FBI audio tape, a recording of Jeremiah Clay during an interrogation before his disappearance in 1978. "I didn't do anything to those kids. They chose to follow me. I just showed them the truth behind the mirror." Rebecca gripped the chair tightly. That voice, it was the same. That night, as light rain fell softly outside, Rebecca sat alone in Elena's room. The wardrobe mirror had been polished until it gleamed. Beside her sat the playback device, ready with Elena's recording queued up. At exactly 2:04 a.m., the same time as Elena's final message all those years ago, she pressed play. Elena's voice came through gently. "Mommy, he's here again." The room seemed to hold its breath. Rebecca stared at the mirror. The nightlight didn't flicker. No sound echoed. But then, the mirror began to fog slightly, as if something inside had exhaled. Rebecca stood up. She whispered for the first time, as if speaking directly to the glass. "My love, I heard you. If you're there, let me in." A soft click sounded behind her. The wardrobe door creaked open, on its own dot. The wardrobe door creaked open, without a gust of wind. No hand touched it. No mechanical sound like before, only a soft click, like someone whispering gently, "Come in." Rebecca stood frozen. In the darkness of Elena's room, only the soft yellow glow of the star-shaped nightlight remained, casting a faint, fragile light onto the mirror. And for the first time in 15 years, what she saw wasn't just her own reflection. Instead, it was something else. Still the same room, the same layout, but the colors were paler, the lighting warped, as if she were peering into a distorted replica. A ghostly version of the very space she stood in. In the mirror, the pillow on the bed was shifted, the curtains half closed, and the wardrobe wide open. A shadow moved past in the background of the mirror. Rebecca inhaled sharply. Her body trembled, but her feet moved forward, one slow step at a time. Since discovering the recording chip inside the teddy bear and hearing the whisper of Jeremiah Clay rising like a ghost from the static, Rebecca was no longer the panicked mother she once was. She was now a tracker, chasing her daughter's shadow with a heart hardened by loss, yet still burning with hope. She stepped closer to the wardrobe. The door remained ajar. But this time, as her hand reached inside, she didn't touch hangers or old dresses, but a wall, cold, wooden, and yet it gave beneath her fingertips as if covered in damp skin. When she pressed slightly, it peeled away like old paint, revealing a deep, yawning blackness within. No path, no floor, just a void, a rip in space. A small whisper, "Mom!" Without hesitation, she leaned in, slid through the opening, feeling her whole body sucked inward. No gravity, no sound, no light. Just the strange sensation of falling, not downward, but inward, as if into the pupil of an eye watching her across time. When she opened her eyes, Rebecca realized she was standing in a familiar room, and yet completely foreign. Elena's room, but mirrored. Everything was arranged the same, yet the lighting carried a pale, bluish moon tint, and the air was so still she could hear her own heartbeat. The toys were coated in a faint layer of mist-like dust, and the mirror in this space reflected nothing. Rebecca walked forward, heart pounding. In the corner where the teddy bear once sat, she found a folded note. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "Mom, I can see you now, but I can't come back. He keeps me in the second level. The door behind the mirror will close when you turn away. If you stay too long, you'll forget too." The second level? Forget? Rebecca turned, intending to leave, but the wardrobe was gone. The room itself seemed to shift, as though the very space was breathing. Footsteps echoed from the left hallway. She followed them. At the end of the corridor was a spiral staircase of faint light, as though assembled from fragments of memory. Crayon portraits lined the walls, faces of children. Elena, Allie, others Rebecca didn't recognize. At the base of the stairs stood a black iron door, and from behind it, a dim red light pulsed, like the heartbeat of something that had never slept. Rebecca placed her hand on the handle, ice cold, and then she heard it. The laugh. Not loud, but steady and ancient, like a man who had been laughing beside children no one remembered, for generations. "She's gone deeper than you, and yet you still came. How lovely." Rebecca staggered backward. That voice. It was the voice from the recording. There was no turning back. She opened the door. A flood of red light poured out, and before her was a glass-walled room. Inside, a small bed, a low wooden table, and a child sitting with her back turned. Rebecca stepped closer. "Elena?" The child didn't answer but tilted her head slightly. The curly brown hair, the purple sweater with a kitten print, identical to what Elena wore the day she vanished. Rebecca gently tapped the glass. The girl slowly turned. Elena's eyes widened. No tears, no smile, but her lips moved. "Mom, you came..." Rebecca placed her hand on the glass. Elena did the same. Their palms aligned, separated only by a thin layer of glass. But it felt like an entire world stood between them. Then Rebecca heard footsteps behind her. A voice, achingly familiar, whispered directly in her ear. "She can leave, but someone must stay." Rebecca spun around. A tall figure stood backlit, face blank with eyes like hollow graves, and on his chest the six-petal symbol carved in the forest bunker. Jeremiah Clay. Or whatever had once been Jeremiah Clay. And suddenly she understood. For Elena to return, someone had to take her place. And time was running out. The glass chamber was bathed in a dim red glow, like the bleeding heart of a forgotten world. Rebecca stood face to face with her daughter, separated only by a thin pane of glass that seemed to divide not just space, but life and death, reality and illusion, hope and darkness. Elena hadn't aged, still looked exactly as she did on the night she disappeared. 7 years old, small, pale, and a frightened gleam hidden in every breath. Behind Rebecca, he still stood. Jeremiah Clay, or the shadow wearing his face, did not move forward. He merely tilted his head like a predator, waiting for its prey to step willingly into the trap. His voice drifted through the room, soft as wind through the forest. "She can leave, but someone must take her place. That is the law." Rebecca didn't turn around. She looked into Elena's eyes, and in that moment, something strange happened. Elena didn't blink, as if the two of them understood everything without needing a single word. As if Elena already knew her mother would do it. And Rebecca knew. She had made her choice. Without hesitation, Rebecca nodded. "I'll stay." Jeremiah didn't reply, but the room dimmed instantly, as though their agreement had been carved into the very air. The glass between Rebecca and Elena vibrated slightly, then cracked with a thread-thin line, before shattering into glowing dust that vanished like it had never been there. Elena flinched, stumbling forward. Rebecca dropped to her knees and opened her arms. "Sweetheart," the girl murmured. Rebecca pulled her close. That small, warm body filled her chest like rain after 15 years of drought. She didn't cry. She only smiled. "It's okay now, my love. Mommy's here." Elena trembled. "He said, if I go, you—" "Shh," Rebecca whispered, her hand on Elena's hair. "I have chosen." He stepped forward, slowly. "It's done," he said. "The door will close, and you will become part of this place." Rebecca held her daughter one last time. She gently pushed Elena away, her eyes instructing her silently. "Run, close your eyes, don't look back. The door will only open once." Elena hesitated, looked back one more time, then ran down the corridor toward the mirrored room, where the wardrobe stood wide open, the light beyond shining like a portal through dense fog. Rebecca turned toward Jeremiah. "Why?" He tilted his head. "Because fear is the sweetest scent. Children are wells of memory. The more they dream, the more they believe, the easier they are to keep." "And me?" she smirked. "I've got nothing left to dream." "Exactly," he said. "Which means you'll last here for a very long time." Elena passed through the mirror. In a flash of white light, the girl tumbled back onto the bedroom floor, her real bedroom, where everything remained untouched, and the clock still read 2:04 a.m. The wardrobe door shut behind her, as if it had never opened. Elena clutched her chest, breathing heavily. Then she screamed, "Mommy!" No answer, only the sound of rain tapping softly on the window pane. 3 days later, the town of Bend was shaken by an unprecedented event. Rebecca Morgan, the woman who had lived alone for 15 years waiting for her missing daughter, had vanished from her home without a trace. Elena's bedroom was open, the teddy bear placed neatly on the bed and on the floor. A photo of Elena hugging her mother, newly taken, clear, and vibrant. But no one knew who had taken it. Police found no sign of Rebecca, but Elena, now safely back, told them something that made every investigator, every psychiatrist shudder. "My mom traded places with me. She's not missing. She's just—" holding the door from the other side. 4 months later, Elena began drawing again. The first drawings were of her mother. Then came the glass room, the faceless children, and finally, a mirror with open eyes staring from within. She didn't talk much, but each night, before bed, she placed her hand on the mirror and whispered, "I'm still here, Mommy, and I won't forget." In Bend, people still share the story of the strange mother, the one who opened the wardrobe and never walked back out. But if you ever visit the old Morgan house at exactly 2:04 a.m. and stand before the mirror in the second-floor bedroom, you might hear 3 soft knocks, and if you're still enough, quiet enough, to truly listen, you may hear a warm voice whisper, "Sweetheart, I'm still here." The first winter after Elena's return, snow came earlier than usual in Bend. A thin layer of ice covered the surface of Deschutes Lake, reflecting the ash-gray sky, cold and silent like a blank page. In the familiar wooden house on Edgewater Drive, Elena had grown a few months older, but in her eyes, there was something that no longer resembled a child who had merely gone missing. She didn't laugh like other kids her age. She disliked noise, avoided crowds. She spent most of her time in her room, drawing, reading, and watching the mirror, not to admire herself, but to listen. Since coming back, Elena had kept one strange habit. Every night, at exactly 2:04 a.m., she would sit up, gently touch the mirror on her wardrobe, whisper something, and quietly go back to sleep. No one knew what she said, but each morning Elena would smile, a calm smile, as if she had just received a silent message. That evening, the snow fell heavily. Wind howled through the pine trees, and in the dark room, only the star-shaped nightlight cast a soft amber glow. Elena sat on the floor. In front of her was the old mirror, now reframed, but its glass untouched, the very glass her mother had never allowed anyone to replace in 15 years. She pulled a pencil from the drawer and scribbled on a sheet of paper, an oval shape representing the mirror. On the other side were 2 figures, one tall and one small, their hands pressed together through the glass. Beneath it, she wrote, "We are not truly separated, if there's still a mirror." At exactly 2:04, Elena stepped forward and gently placed her hand on the glass. This time, instead of knocks or whispers, something strange happened. The glass grew warm. Then, A faint fog bloomed across its surface, as if someone had breathed on it from the other side. Elena held her breath. Under the dim light, a thin, crooked line of writing appeared, drawn as if by a fingertip. In the bottom drawer of the desk, open it when the lights are off. Elena gasped, looking around. No one else in the room. The wind still blew outside, snow still fell, but the mirror had written. It was her mother. It had to be. She didn't hesitate. Elena turned off the nightlight. The room sank into darkness. Guided only by the faint light from the window, she crept to her old desk, the one she had used since she was little, where Rebecca once kept her earliest drawings. She opened the bottom drawer. A soft click. Inside, amid scraps of paper, scissors, and pencils, was a light brown envelope. No address, no stamp. Just 3 smudged words written in ink. To Elena. Elena dropped to the floor. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, folded in thirds, carrying the damp scent of time. She unfolded it, her eyes scanning the handwriting she knew so well, her mother's. My dearest Elena, if you're reading this, it means I succeeded. You've returned, and I stayed. I don't want you to be afraid or sad, because this was my choice, and I've never regretted it. On this side, everything is different. There is no time, no sun, no bird song, only memory. Everything here feeds on the memories and fears of forgotten children. But you know what? I brought you with me, in my heart, so the place I'm in isn't so dark anymore. He, the thing you feared, can't touch me. I'm not a child. I don't dream, I don't fear, I only remember, and that weakens him day by day. If one day the mirror no longer fogs at 2:04 a.m. or the knocking stops, that means I've completely become a part of this place. But until then, I will keep writing, keep sending, keep listening, keep waiting. Live, be strong, be joyful, and don't come back. Because if you come back, he will find your trail again, and I can't let that happen. Love, Mom. Elena pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling silently. She didn't sob, didn't cry out like some children might when reading a final message from a mother who gave up everything. She simply sat there, still, as if she understood, as if she had already accepted. And she knew that her mother's love did not reside in an embrace, but in the one instruction that meant everything. Do not come back. The next morning, when Elena's aunt, the only remaining family, entered the room to wake her for school, she noticed something strange. The mirror, normally clear and polished, had a small mark on it, as if someone had pressed a hand from the inside. Right in the center, drawn with a fingertip across the misted glass, was a tiny heart. And inside that heart, a single word. Still, when asked about it, Elena only smiled. She didn't answer. She only whispered softly, Mom's still there, and I won't forget. 12 years later. Elena Morgan, now 19 years old, was a freshman psychology student at the University of Oregon. She lived in a small apartment near the dorms, a modest bedroom, neatly arranged books, and only one mirror, a simple wooden-framed piece bought from a thrift store. But not once did Elena look into the mirror for too long. She always avoided letting her gaze linger on the depth of the glass, as if afraid to accidentally awaken something sleeping just behind the reflective surface. Since reading her mother's letter at 17, Elena had kept her promise, never to go back. She no longer opened the closet at 2:04 a.m., nor tapped on the mirror, but she always listened, silently. Yet some things don't need to be called to find their way back. That early winter, a girl from the dorm next to Elena's suddenly disappeared. Her name was Megan, 18, a history major. The last person to see her claimed that Megan had been acting strangely for weeks, often standing motionless for hours, staring into the mirror like she was hypnotized. One time, she was overheard whispering to herself over and over in the middle of the night, "He's behind the mirror." Police got involved. Megan's room showed no signs of struggle. The window was locked from the inside, no forced entry. But on the vanity table, they found a crude drawing scrawled in blood, a child being held back by 2 long arms reaching out from the mirror. When Elena heard, a chill ran through her body. That familiar feeling, the one she thought had long been buried, surged up like an undercurrent, beating at her heart like a knock from the other side. She visited the scene, observing quietly behind the police tape, and when sunlight slanted through the shattered vanity mirror, she saw something no one else noticed. The 6-petal flower symbol, identical to the one etched in the basement years ago, in the room where her mother had once been trapped. Jeremiah Clay. No, that thing had never died. It was still harvesting, still waiting. And if it had come for Elena, for Allie, for Megan, there had to be more victims. She knew. This wasn't coincidence. It was a cycle, a system, a mirror network. Elena began to investigate. She uncovered hundreds of similar disappearances across the U.S. over the past 50 years, all sharing one chilling pattern. The victims were all children or adolescents, ages 7 to 20. They vanished from locked rooms with no signs of intrusion. Before disappearing, they exhibited repeated behavior around mirrors, whispering, drawing strange symbols, leaving cryptic messages about him or a voice from the closet. The deeper Elena went, the more she realized mirrors weren't just for reflection. They were doors, bridges, transitional zones between reality and a realm of trapped memories. And something, or someone, lived off fear, devouring minds that hadn't yet grown strong enough. She created a digital map marking every disappearance, sketching a diagram, and then, all points converged on one place, an abandoned wooden house in the Deschutes forest, once the home of Jeremiah Clay, the very place her mother had entered and never returned from. Elena knew she had to face this. No longer a frightened child, she had grown. She had outlived death. She carried within her the strength of someone protected by a mother's entire soul. That night, she returned to Bend. The old house had been preserved, cared for by an elderly neighbor. When she stepped into her childhood bedroom, where it had all begun, Elena felt time reverse. The mirror was still there. Muffin the teddy bear had faded, and on the bed lay an envelope. No one knew who had placed it there. Elena opened it. The message was simple. "The door is open. You can close it now." She looked up. The mirror cracked slightly, not shattered, just enough to reveal a shadowed slit behind the glass. And for the first time in 12 years, Elena wasn't afraid. She placed her hand on the mirror and whispered, "Mom, I lived. Now, let me stand guard in your place." A knock echoed, not 3 beats, just one. The mirror opened. Elena stepped through, leaving not a trace behind. The next morning, police recorded yet another disappearance in Bend. But strangely, from that day forward, there were no more reports of missing children in the Deschutes area or anywhere nearby. Everything stopped. Locals called it a miracle. But if someone were curious enough to enter the second-floor bedroom of the Morgan house at midnight, they'd see the mirror still hanging there. Not cracked, not fogged, but with a light inside, as if waiting for someone new. And on the edge of the mirror, written in breath-thin strokes, was a final message. If you are willing to carry light into the darkest place, you will never be lost. There are losses that leave no scars on the body, yet carve deep into the hearts of those left behind. There are whispers that no one else can hear, except for those who still believe that love can travel across time and even between worlds. Elena came back, but in return, a mother never stepped out of the mirror again. Sometimes, sacrifice doesn't require blood, just one soul brave enough to walk through the dark to hold the light for someone else. And if one day you hear a soft knock from inside your mirror, don't be afraid. Maybe it's not something terrifying coming through, but a heart still standing guard for you from the other side. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. This is Nestsoul, where stories are not just heard, but felt and remembered for a long, long time.